Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Hidden Tales. Your support keeps the stories alive and the secrets unfolding. What happens when love is replaced by betrayal at the most vulnerable moment of a woman's life, when she is carrying a child and trusting the person who vowed to protect her? It begins quietly, almost invisibly, with unanswered calls, distracted glances, and promises that suddenly feel hollow. In this story, a man stood at a crossroads he never expected to face, forced to choose between the woman carrying his unborn child and the woman who made him feel alive again. He told himself it was complicated, that no one would truly be hurt, that things would somehow work themselves out. But choices made in secrecy rarely stay hidden for long. While his pregnant wife waited at home, battling exhaustion, fear, and hope for the future, he was building another life in the shadows. Each lie pushed him further away from the family he was supposed to be building. Then, one morning, everything shattered. The house was silent. Her presence was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just an absence, so heavy it felt intentional. Panic followed denial. Guilt followed panic. And slowly, a terrifying realization began to surface. Her disappearance was not an accident, not a moment of weakness, and not something that could be undone. What she left behind would expose truths neither he nor his mistress were prepared to face, and once revealed, nothing would ever be the same again. She was the kind of woman people described as gentle, dependable, easy to overlook. She didn't command rooms or raise her voice to be heard. Instead, she carried herself with quiet grace, finding happiness in small, meaningful details. Pregnancy had only deepened that softness. She spoke to her unborn child when she was alone, imagining first steps, first words, and a future filled with warmth and stability. She dreamed of simple things, a peaceful home, shared meals, a partner who would stand beside her as they became parents together. Motherhood wasn't just a phase for her, it was a purpose she embraced with her whole heart. Yet despite being married, she had never felt more alone. His body slept beside hers, but his mind lived somewhere else. Conversations felt one-sided, affection came and went without explanation, and his absence lingered even when he was physically present. She learned to swallow her loneliness, telling herself it was temporary, that stress and responsibility changed people. Some nights, she cried quietly, careful not to wake him, afraid that admitting the truth might shatter what little remained of their marriage. Still, there were moments, small, almost invisible ones, when her eyes lingered on his phone for a second too long, when she noticed how his tone shifted when certain names came up, when his excuses sounded rehearsed rather than sincere. She didn't confront him. Instead, she hoped. She believed that protecting her family meant enduring discomfort, choosing patience over confrontation. She told herself that love required sacrifice, especially now, with a child on the way. But beneath her tenderness lived a strength few recognized. She listened carefully, remembered everything, and observed patterns others dismissed. Her vulnerability never erased her awareness. It sharpened it. While everyone else assumed she was distracted by pregnancy, she was quietly piecing together a reality she wasn't meant to see. Her calm wasn't ignorance. It was control. And though no one noticed at the time, every silence, every unanswered question, every forced smile was a step toward a decision she was already preparing to make. She was everything his wife wasn't, or, at least, everything he convinced himself she lacked. Bold where his wife was quiet, outspoken where his wife was reserved, daring where his wife was cautious. The mistress thrived on attention, craving validation for the control and influence she could wield over others. Her own insecurities, buried beneath layers of confidence, made her cling to the idea of being chosen, of being needed, of being irresistible. Every secret smile, every lingering touch, felt like proof that she mattered in a way that his wife, with her gentle nature, could never provide. For him, the affair became a justification, a series of rationalizations that dulled any sense of wrongdoing. He told himself he wasn't leaving his wife, He was merely seeking companionship, excitement, fulfillment of desires she couldn't satisfy. He convinced himself he was owed this pleasure, this thrill, this sense of being alive. Every stolen afternoon, every whispered phone call, every hidden meeting was a carefully constructed illusion of control. He didn't see it as cheating. He saw it as balancing two aspects of his life, managing a private thrill without anyone paying the price. Yet managing it required deception at every turn. He grew distant at home, emotionally unavailable, curt in conversation, and distracted during moments that once mattered. He lied without hesitation, explaining absences with work, errands, or late nights, believing his explanations were enough. The mistress met him in secret locations, in cafes and hotel rooms, where no one would recognize them. The thrill of secrecy only fed his arrogance, reinforcing his belief that he could handle both lives without consequence. But balancing two worlds is an impossible act, and his choices were already tipping the scale. The line between control and chaos blurred, and the weight of lies began pressing in. He imagined that he could continue this way indefinitely, that neither love nor guilt would catch up to him. Yet, deep down, a faint unease lingered, a whisper he refused to hear. Eventually, a decision would demand finality. The moment came quietly, almost unremarkably, when he realized that he could not serve two masters, that continuing both relationships required a betrayal of irreversible magnitude. The choice was his, and once made, there would be no turning back. The argument began with small, almost trivial things, a misplaced item, a tone in a conversation, a question asked the wrong way. But the tension had been building for weeks, months even, and now it boiled over. He raised his voice, frustration and impatience threading every word. She responded softly, carefully choosing what to say and what to leave unspoken. She didn't plead, didn't cry, didn't accuse. Her voice remained steady, measured, almost eerily calm, as if she had already anticipated this confrontation and knew precisely how to weather it. He shouted, pacing the room, shaking his head at what he considered her stubbornness. Every word he threw at her was met with silence, her hands resting lightly on her belly. The baby untouched, yet somehow central to every pause, every measured breath she took. She didn't beg him to stay. She didn't attempt to manipulate or guilt him. Instead, she simply observed, her calmness unsettling him more than any argument could. He failed to notice the subtle signs, the way her eyes held a quiet resolve, the way she straightened her back as if preparing for something beyond his comprehension, the slight narrowing of her lips that wasn't anger but determination. Finally, he made his move, storming out of the house, muttering excuses, shutting the door behind him. In that moment, he thought he had left the conflict unresolved but contained, believing she would react as she always had, fragile, desperate, dependent on his return. What he didn't see was the look she gave him just before he disappeared into the night. It was not one of fear, sorrow, or pleading. It was a look that silently said she had taken note of everything, remembered everything, and understood far more than he ever suspected. That final glance lingered longer than any word could, a quiet warning that she was preparing for a world he would never control. It was the last time he saw her in the familiar confines of their home, unaware that when he returned, nothing would be the same. Her absence that night marked the end of his assumptions, the beginning of his reckoning, and the start of a chain of events he could not undo. Morning arrived with a quiet that felt almost unnatural. The house, usually filled with the soft hum of life, was eerily still. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the small details that suddenly seemed out of place. Her slippers sat neatly by the bed, untouched, as if she had simply vanished mid-step. The nursery, once a space of preparation and hope, felt empty and abandoned, the tiny clothes and folded blankets mocking the absence of the one who had organized them with such care. On the kitchen counter, her phone lay face down, screen unlit, untouched. The hospital bag, which had been meticulously packed just days earlier, was missing entirely. A note rested on the table, brief, cryptic, and almost clinical, No explanation, no apology, only a few words that made him pause. He read it once, twice, trying to decipher any hint of reasoning, but it offered nothing but a cold, detached acknowledgement of her departure. At first, he shrugged, brushing it off with practiced indifference. Surely she had gone for a walk, or to a friend's house, or perhaps just needed time to think. But as minutes stretched into hours, confusion crept in, subtle at first, then gnawing at the edges of his certainty. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. The house, normally noisy with her presence, amplified his growing unease. Fear arrived quietly, a slow and creeping realization that something was wrong. The absence wasn't temporary. Her belongings, her routines, her very essence, left behind without warning, suggested something far more deliberate. The thought that she might have simply walked away seemed increasingly impossible. The weight of her absence pressed down, suffocating and relentless. And then it hit him with chilling clarity. She didn't just leave. She had vanished. Not out of anger, not out of whim, but with purpose, foresight, and an understanding of the consequences that would unravel his life. In that moment, the first threads of panic, guilt, and dread began to weave their unrelenting grip around him, setting the stage for truths he had no idea he was about to face. The house that once seemed so familiar now felt like a trap of their own making. The husband and the mistress scrambled to construct a narrative that would protect them both, rehearsing explanations, convincing themselves and each other that she had acted impulsively, that pregnancy had made her emotional, that she simply needed to leave. They whispered the same phrases repeatedly, trying to sound convincing to family, friends, and even themselves. She ran away, she overreacted, she needed space. But no matter how carefully they painted the picture, cracks began to form. Police involvement brought reality closer, relentless in its impartial scrutiny. Questions were asked that couldn't be sidestepped. Where had she gone? Why had she left her phone behind? Why take nothing but the essentials? Friends and family pressed, their curiosity sharp and unwavering. The husband felt the first pangs of guilt he could no longer dismiss. Nights were sleepless, thoughts spiraling, imagining the worst. Every unanswered call, every silent room, made him realize that his lies and his choices had consequences far larger than he could manage. The mistress, once brimming with confidence, now felt exposed. Every passing hour amplified her fear that she had underestimated the woman she had tried to replace. Then investigators began to uncover subtle clues she had left behind, careful, precise, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. Documents meticulously copied, messages stored, timelines noted, places she had visited logged down to the smallest detail. She had planned her disappearance with deliberate foresight, ensuring that she had the upper hand while leaving a trail just enough to reveal the truth when the time came. Each discovery unraveled the false narrative, showing her not as fragile or defeated, but as intelligent and prepared. The realization struck hard. She wasn't weak, she wasn't naive, and she had never been helpless. Eventually, the full truth emerged. She had left to protect herself and her unborn child, but also because she had uncovered deeper betrayals, financial manipulation, secrets, and deceptions that the husband and mistress had thought would remain hidden forever. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, the husband collapsed, excuses dissolving into shame and silence. The mistress broke down, realizing she had never been chosen for love, she had only been convenient. Their arrogance, their assumptions, had blinded them to her strength. The consequences were swift and devastating. Trust evaporated, reputations shattered, and relationships collapsed under the weight of lies and exposure. The fallout was total. Legally, he faced scrutiny that stripped him of credibility and power. Friends and family distanced themselves, unable to reconcile his actions with the man they thought they knew. The mistress, once confident and self-assured, found herself alone, confronted with the reality that she had never been special, only complicit. Their relationship, built on secrecy and selfish desire, disintegrated under the exposure of truth. The world they had imagined together crumbled, leaving only regret and guilt. She, meanwhile, was far away from the chaos she left behind. Safe, anonymous, and in control of her future, she built a life defined by her own choices rather than their betrayals. Her child arrived into a world protected from deceit and danger, nurtured by her quiet determination. Victory was hers, not through vengeance, but through survival, a calm, powerful triumph that left the others to face the consequences of their own actions. Her silence had been deliberate, her absence calculated, her life reclaimed. Betrayal is never a story that ends when the betrayer walks away. It lingers, grows, and follows the choices they thought would remain hidden. Survival, resilience, and awareness turn the powerless into the strongest, and those who underestimate them learn too late that every action has its price. Some victories are quiet, some reckonings are relentless, but the truth has a way of coming to light. And when it does, there is no escaping the consequences. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Hidden Tales. Your support helps us bring more gripping stories to life.